For more on India's goods and services tax and the future of the economy under Prime Minister Narendra Modi, I spoke to Peter Kohli. He's Chief Investment Officer at DMS Funds. I asked him why the GST is such a big deal.
In India, they have so many different taxations that are levied both by states and local authorities that it's a complete and utter mess. And so what the GST is supposed to do is to get rid of all those taxes, with the exception of a couple, and have just one flat tax of between 12 and 18%.
Now, Modi actually hailed the passage of this bill as a great step by Team India, a great step towards transformation and better transparency. So some people are wondering about the timing. Why now?
Well, actually, I've been rather critical of the Modi government recently because they should have, the GST tax has been floundering for the last 9 years. And it's never got anywhere because politics has got in the way. And so I wrote an article in which I was very critical of Mr. Modi because he was elected with a large mandate to change the status quo. And I said, you must pass this legislation to prove to investors, especially foreign investors, that you have the clout that you say you have. And that's why it was so important to do, especially in his first term, because we do have elections coming up in about, what, 2 years, a couple of years.
So then with that being said, I mean, at one point Modi, when he was in the lower houses of government, he was actually opposed to this and now has kind of changed his tune. He said once he got that experience and now sees it differently. But does all the blame fall on Modi's shoulders for the time that it took to get to this point?
Well, no, as I said just a second ago, it's politics. Politics got in the way, and it's horrible. And I wrote about this, and I said, you know, that nobody seems to be doing the right thing for the population. It's if the opposition party proposes something that may be very good for the Indian population, just because the opponents had suggested the governing party would say no, just a knee-jerk reaction, and that's what happens, and it's ridiculous. So, yes, Mr. Modi may have been against it, but now he's for it. And he should have been for it, and everybody should have been for it. It's a great piece of legislation.
Now, speaking of everyone being for it, let's also look at the reaction from the business community. What does this mean for doing business in India right now?
Well, what it'll do is India is totally ruled by bureaucracies. And there are two different bureaucracies, one to say yes and one to say no, so nothing gets done. And what this will do is it will eliminate a tremendous amount of bureaucracy, and then it will also cut down on things like corruption in state government level. Because what happens is, in order for a businessman to do any business there, he has to bribe somebody. And this will do away with that level of bureaucracy, as there'll be just the one taxation.
So then with that being said, what do you think will be some of the key industries that could really benefit or perhaps really struggle because of this?
Okay. I think the industries that will benefit are pharmaceutical industries, infrastructure, manufacturing, and high tech will be the ones. The ones that, you know that there are not industries, but two products that aren't going to be taxed come under the umbrella of the GST. One is alcohol and one is tobacco, the sin taxes. That's probably because most states get about 25% of their budget from taxing those directly, so they don't want to give that up to the national government. But having said that, one of the industries, and I did just mention that would benefit, is pharmaceuticals at one level. At a different level, they have to work out the business of free medicine. Right now, as it's written, it would actually be taxed, even though it's free to people like the WHO and other people, indigenous people who can't afford the medicine. So they've got to work that out. They can't be taxed.
What does this mean for Modi and his legacy in terms of the future of India's economy?
Oh, I think that what GST will do is that it will add about 1% to GDP growth next year. Absolutely. And what it will do for his legacy is the fact that he will be perceived, especially by foreign investors, as somebody who can put the hammer down and get legislation passed. And that will bode very well for FDI in the future.
And what about the global implications beyond India? How do you think the rest of the world's going to react to this? Would it be positive? Will there be some countries that would also be considering a similar sort of streamlining of their taxes in response?
Yeah, in fact, if I remember correctly, I can't remember whether it was Malaysia or Thailand that recently implemented their own GST tax. I think that this may be the wave of the future, because it's not just in India, but it's in all countries, even developed countries, where you have VAT at different levels, you have all these different taxes. And what this will do is make India one, just like the EU, will make it one common market.